Our speakers tonight were in China 60 years ago during a time of great upheaval and civil war. Their experiences remain vivid in their minds to this day. When you hear their stories, you will understand why. C.K. Tien will be our first speaker, followed by Roger Wei, and then Marty and Mark Shaw. We ask that you hold your questions until the end of the program. Thank you. C.K.
Good evening, everybody. I'm C.K. Tien, was born at, can you hear me now?
No.
Good evening, everybody. I'm C.K. Tien, and I was born and grew up, went to school, and get married in Beijing. During my childhood days, grew up in Beijing, and I remembered the Japanese is already occupied Beijing. So the map here, you can see Beijing's here. And the Japanese come over to China through Korea and then through there and go into China and around this area, the Manchuria area, and which is just north part of Beijing, these three provinces over here, and then they slowly coming down from Manchuria here and come down to Beijing, and then slowly around the coast, and they take years to occupy China along the coast and up even Hong Kong, and they occupied. When the Japanese occupied Beijing, and Chiang Kai-shek has to move the capital from Beijing to the central part of China, and, in Sichuan province, and made Chongqing city becomes to the capital for China. When the Japanese occupied Beijing, Chiang Kai-shek has to give up and surrender and move the capital into a central part of China, and China sort of divided into two parts. And along the coast was occupied by the Japanese, and inside here, this part of China is occupied by China, by Chiang Kai-shek. And during this time, Mao Zedong, you heard, tried to come in to power and try to gathering all the poor people, poor farmers, and get together and teach them what communist means, what communists do. And especially they told them the communist is for the poor people, not rich people. And take care of the poor people and help the poor people, not like Chiang Kai-shek, and always help the rich, ignore the poor, and press the poor people. So that time, Mao Zedong started around the countryside, along the coast, and tried to gathering the poor people and the farmers during the daytime, they have to work for a living. But during the night, after dinner, and the communists try to teach them what is communist. And they slowly gather them and put them together like a team of the soldier. But since the communists is very poor, they have no money to make uniforms. That's one reason. The main reason they don't want to wear uniform because they don't want people notice they are the Communist Party soldiers. And but if necessary, they can have guns, handguns in their hand. And when 1945 comes, and the Second World War is over, and the Germans and the Japanese all surrendered. And when after the Japanese surrendered, they have to leave China, go back to their own country. So during that time, Chiang Kai-shek flied back to Beijing with a small group of soldiers, and then established Beijing as the Chinese capital again. And that's from 1945. And after 2 years, 1947, during these 2 years, Mao Zedong is really working hard and to gathering the communist farmers and poor people and get together, and he decided he want to take over China. Of course, Beijing is always the point, the place they want to get it in first. So during that time, Mao Zedong gathered all these farmer soldiers and moved slowly towards to Beijing. And when they come very close to Beijing, and Chiang Kai-shek was very scared, and he doesn't know what to do. So then finally he decided to close the Beijing city gate and won't let the communists come in. And before made a decision, he did lots of preparation and shipped lots of food and lots of supply and the vegetables, etc., and into the city. Then the city gate was closed. And the only transportation going out and coming in to Beijing city is the airplane. And that time, the communists, they have no equipment to shoot the airplane, and no cannon. And so the plane coming in and out from Beijing is very safe. But all the communist soldiers, they have handguns. And by that time, when the communists is trying to come in, and Chiang Kai-shek is very scared, and people can just go out Beijing from the airplane. They made a temporary runway in the Temple of Heaven Park. If people visit China, Beijing, they must be visit the park, the Temple of Heaven. Is a very famous place. Made a temporary runway so the plane can go out from Beijing city. And that time, the tickets is very hard to get. And even you have money, if you don't have connections, you cannot get the tickets. And that time, we sort of have to get out from Beijing. The reason is because my husband's younger sister married to a general who's Chiang Kai-shek's son, Jiang Jingguo's assistant in Shanghai. And if the communists come in to Beijing and find us, we will be all killed. So because of this connection, we got the ticket finally on 1947, December 27th, just 5 days before the city gate of Beijing opened for the communist soldier to come in. Our plan was from Beijing and fly to Qingdao, Qingdao here, and just south of Beijing. And Qingdao, maybe you know, is a famous place to make the Qingdao beer if you drink the Qingdao beer. And Qingdao was occupied by the Germans for so many years. So the Qingdao beer, the recipe was from Germany. And from our plans is fly to Qingdao, and from Qingdao, from Qingdao, then got a boat to Shanghai and to united with my husband's family there because his mother already there. So on the 27th of December, just 5 days before the gate, the Peking gate, city gate, opened for the communists, we flied out at noontime, and that day the blue sky, nice sunshine, and when the pilot take off, and he announced to us, "I will slowly circle around Beijing City once more to let you say goodbye to Beijing." That moment, my tears just come out from my eyes. And then after 4 and 5 hours flying, and we finally arrived to Qingdao. And then the pilot announced, "Oh, we cannot land because the weather is so foggy and I cannot see the light on the driveway, not on the landway.
Runway.
So he said, if we cannot land, I have to fly back to Beijing. But he said, I will circle around a few times. And then after a while, he announced again, he said, we are very lucky. The fog has moved. I saw the light around the runway, and we can land it now. So we're very lucky, and the plane was landed. After the plane landed, we all come out from the airplane, and the other 4 families, they must be very high position because there's cars waiting for them. They ride away to get into the car, and the car drove them to the city, Qingdao city. And just as the Tians, my husband and his younger brother and me, and I hold the 3 months baby daughter. And we cannot find a place to rent a car, and it's dark, we're so hungry, and we don't know what to do. So finally, we sit on the ground, and my husband said, if we cannot get a transportation, go into the city, maybe we will frozen to death over here during the night. So we were so hopeless, don't know what to do. I wrapped my baby girl with my fur coat and tried to keep her warm. And suddenly we see a car slowly drive towards to us. And we're sort of very happy. And when we come closer, we find out it's a Jeep. And then even closer, we saw 2 young men sit behind the Jeep. And then suddenly I opened my eyes, I saw a young man, and I know him. So I just called his name, and he surprised to look at me, and he said, "CK, how come you are here?" I said, we are just come out from Beijing, fly to Qingdao here, and when we come here, it's dark and no car, no place to rent a car, so we are so scared, so hungry, and can you drive us to the city? And the young man who's German, and we were neighbors in Beijing, and his mother's English and father's German, so he must be represent the German soldiers in Qingdao. So he said, "Oh, of course, come on up to the Jeep." So we went up the Jeep, they drive us to the city, and the first hotel we stopped, my husband doesn't like it, and the second one, and we seems like it, so we thank them, and we coming down into the hotel, bought some dinner, and sleep overnight. So as scheduled, the next morning, my husband should go to see somebody who's taking care of the boats to Shanghai. And so he went there, and the gateman always say, "Hey, stop, don't go in. The person is very busy, cannot see you." So after 3 or 4 days, every day he go to the man's office, the gateman always say, he cannot see you. So finally he decided he just passed the gateman and go straight to the person's office. So when he did that and go straight to the person's office, the gateman came out and shouted to him, and after him say, "Hey, you cannot go in, he's busy." That moment, the man just walked out from his office. He said, "What's going on? Who are you?" And my husband said, "I'm so-and-so, and we want to see so-and-so." "Oh, I'm the person you want to see. And I've been waiting for you a couple of days. How come you never show up?" So in front of the gateman, my husband doesn't want to say anything. And he said, "Can you put us on the boat to go to Shanghai?" He said, "Of course. And you come tomorrow morning with your family, and then I will put you on a boat to go to Shanghai. So my husband was very happy, and the next morning, and we just went to his office, and he took us on a boat. And when he seems to see us settled, and he left. And he said, take 3 days to get to Shanghai. And after the man left, my husband thought he and his brother should go down in the boat and to try to find a place during the night we can sleep. So they two went down. I hold my baby, sit in a very small luggage up on the boat. And while they were away, and I sort of see a gentleman with a black, big fur cap and a big black fur colored coat and walk around the boat. And when he come closer to me, and he said, young lady, are you by yourself with your baby? I said, no, my husband and his brother is inside the boat, trying to find a place for us to sleep during the night. So that moment, my husband and his brother just walked towards to us. So I call him a kind of general. So the general said, follow me. I will put you on another much bigger boat. And so we just trust him, and we followed him, walked a little bit distance because that's on the shore. So he said, this is the boat I'm going to put you in. And I still remember the name of the boat. It's called the Fuxing. So he took us on the boat and see us settled, then he left. And we spent the night, first night there, feel very comfortable, and the next morning when we wake up, we heard the boat we were first on was sink. The reason the boat was sink because it's overload and too many people, and when the boat take off, hit a big rock and the boat sank. Oh, we were so thankful to the Lord. And then after 3 days, we arrived to Shanghai, and the Tian's family get united. And then that's in January. And first time I visited Shanghai, of course, Beijing is a cultured city in China, but Shanghai always a big business city. And the first time I saw an elevator. And that's in January. In May, our brother-in-law knows a captain on a big ship, and they ready to take off to Taiwan. So the brother-in-law said to him, can you put us on your ship and to go to Taiwan? Then he said, of course. And then the whole Tian family went on the ship, and after 3 days, and we arrived at Taiwan. This is the story how I come out from China.
Very good.
I'm Roger Way. Mary and I have been residents at Foxdale for 10 years. I want to first thank Harry Holder for making the slides for me. The project that I was with was under the direction of the Friends Service Unit. The Friends Service Unit is run by the American Friends Service Committee in Philadelphia, along with the Friends Service Council in London. So these two groups of Quakers operate what used to be called the Friends Ambulance Unit, and the name was changed to the Friends Service Unit. The Friends Ambulance Unit started some years ago, and they compiled a list of people who've been in the organization. There are more than 1,000 names listed in this pamphlet, including Mark Shaw and myself. Well, we went to China 66 years ago, so this is an old story. And Mark Shaw and I, plus Bill Foy, we jumped on a freighter boat, went across the Pacific. And this was in May 1945. On May 25th, 1945, we crossed the international date line. So we went from the 25th in the morning to the 27th in the afternoon, and so I never lived in May 26th, 1945, because I went all around the rest of the way around the earth and never made up that one day. Our unit included Americans and British and a lot of New Zealanders, and we had Chinese members as well as Canadians, and several other countries are involved. This said there were 1,000 people in the past, but at the time I was there were probably about 100 members in the group. And these worked in various projects. Next.
Oh, there you are, Mark.
This is a home in Shanghai. It's in the residential district of Shanghai, and the Friends Service Unit rented this house as sort of a reception place for people who were coming to China, and it was also used as a headquarters, and we had our big meetings here. And this is Tim Hayworth, there's Mark Shaw, and I think that's me behind there. So, the next. This is not the whole map of China, it's just the eastern part. You'll recognize some of the cities here, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing is off the map, and out west is Kunming. Shanghai is here. There are two big rivers running all the way across from the mountains in the west out to the Pacific Ocean, one there and another one down here. This one is called Huanghe, the Yellow River, and this one is Jiangzhang, the Shan River here, which empties out in Shanghai. The Huanghe, the Yellow River, was a bad actor. It split in two here, went north, some of it, and then the other half came down here and flooded all the good agricultural land here. So the United Nations Relief Organization came in and cut off the southern branch of the Huanghe, and so it all went out that north way. So some of our projects were set up here in the province of Henan, He means river and Nan means south. So the province name is south of the river. And Kaifeng was one of the main cities, along with Zhengzhou. Then a small town here of Zhongmu was on the banks of that dried up Yellow River. And then this Shirley Toe was just a little side branch out from Zhongmu. So I was assigned to work at Zhengzhou here for a month or so. The American missionaries had set up mission stations in several places in China, one of which was at Zhengzhou, another one was at Jiangda. I went to this Zhengzhou for a month or so. They operated their hospital, the mission hospital there. We had doctors and nurses and many other workers. One of the projects was teaching a course in mechanics. One of our members was a good teacher. He had 20 students. I was there only a month. They put me on a train without any language, an overnight session up to Jiangda. In Jiangda, the same thing, a mission hospital, along with missionary work. So the Friends Service Unit took it over until before the missionaries came back. The two wars were going on, as already been explained, the Japanese War and then the Communist War. Well, the Communist War at Jiangda, we could hear the guns going off all day long, and then in the evening they would come to our hospital for repair. One of the English doctors, Crowley Randall Short, was assigned to take care of one soldier, and so she called on me to help her. She wanted x-rays, so I got the motor started and the x-ray machine, the screen going, and she dug in the back of his neck and found the bullet and took it out. So that was experience at Jiangda. You remember here about 5 years ago, here in State College, there was a factory which made television sets, and that factory was sold to China. It was sold in the city of Jiangda, where I was 50 years earlier. Another little incident in Jiangda, I was walking in the street just for a sightseeing tour one day, and all of a sudden a young man caught up with me, and he said, "Ni shin bu shin Yesu?" Well, I didn't answer him. "Do you believe in Jesus?" And I've been thinking about that question ever since. So I was there at Jiangda about a month. Then I was transferred back here to this main section of action here. The next slide. This is Kala-Azar disease. Untreated is 95% fatal, treated is 95% saved. So we had several teams that did Kala-Azar treatment. Next slide. This is a group of patients waiting outside our clinic, ready to get shots for Kala-Azar. This is one of our cooks. He's partaking of some of his own product there. Next. So this is the dried up riverbed here, and three of us are standing there looking into, well, there's a little pool of water there, attempting to go swimming. So we went down and went swimming, and I caught hepatitis. And so the doctor put me in bed for a month and fed me only dried skim milk. But after a month I got better and went back to work. Well, one of my jobs was to drive a six-wheel drive dump truck where we drove 30 miles to the coal mine to get a load of coal to bring to for a brick kiln making bricks to build a hospital. Well, I was at the coal mine. The owner told me how much money. It was during a time of great inflation, so I had a lot of money about that big in my pocket, and paid him. Then after I paid him, he said, "How much do you want this receipt made out for?" You got it. How much graft was I ready to pick up from it? Well, I told him, make it out for what it was. Next. This man is Wang Xiaoxian. He was a college graduate, Chinese man who was in our unit, and he was very fond of farm animals. He collected all sorts of animals, cows, chickens, pigs, ducks, and you can see he has some sheep here. Well, in a few weeks the communists came, and we knew they were coming, so we was more or less ready for them psychologically at least. When they came, they took all of his animals and ate them, I guess. So this project here was right on the edge of a small village, and the farmers don't live out on the farm in their houses out on the farmland, but they live in a little village, and each village has a water hole, a well, where they bring a bucket and reach down 8 feet and bring up a bucket of water to take home to use. But in the evening, the farmers come there and get down on their haunches and sit around the well and shoot the bull. I thought I would join them a few times, so I went down and sat with them. And where did you come from? I came from the United States. Where's that? On the other side of the earth. Well, if you're from the other side of the earth, the water must surely run out of the well. and they meant it. It was amazing. I don't think you could get that today, but it happened back then. Well, when the communists came, we had a small amount of corn, and they said, "We'll take the corn." And we told them, "No, you can't have the corn." But they took me and an Englishman hostage. They took us 5 miles away over to another village and kept us overnight, and then turned us loose. The idea was that we were able to testify that they had done no harm to our group, which is probably a smart idea. Next. That's me driving the ox with the plow. You notice the cage around his nose. That's so he won't eat the corn as he walks down the road. Next. So the communists came, and this is not the communists, this is the nationalist train, but the communists soon took it over, and they dug up the ties, put the ties in a pile, and got a good hot fire going, and then put the rails over the ties, so they bent the rails. So it was totally inoperable after that. Next. This is a national soldier at the end of a bridge. It's keeping guard. And of course, the minute the communists showed up, he would be outside of it in a hurry. Next. Weaving, making cloth. We started some co-ops making cloth. Next. So this is some of our group of workers. Here's Tim Hayworth. That's me sitting beside him. This is Gene Liu, one of our members. And here's Bill Foy. And there's Mark Shaw. There's Peter Mason, an Englishman. And there's Melvin Rugg, back there. Next. So I talked about making bricks here, the mud is put into these blocks here, and then the bricks are dried again, and eventually put into the kiln along with the coal, and they're burnt there to make the solid bricks. Next. So here's the finished product. This is our new hospital we have built. Next. Gung Yi Fu Wu Hui. This is a Chinese name for our Friend Service unit. And these are two of our good carpenters here. When we go to China, they give us a Chinese name. And my name is Wei, so you can see it was pretty easy to start with. Wei Rojie. Rojie means like a hero. When they address you, they call me Wei Xian Shang. Xian means previously, and Shang means born. So they address me Mr. Wei. They don't call me Mr. I mean Wei Xian Shang. Wei before born, previous to where they were born. This is to give you honor because you're older. Older people are supposed to understand better than young people. So anybody, doesn't matter if they're old or young, they address me as Wei Xian Shang, implying that I was old enough to be superior in knowledge over them. I have a name card which says Wei Xian Shang on it. I've been carrying this card for 66 years. And no one can read it.
I can read it.
Next.
Oh,
Pound feet. Next. So I applied to be in China with a Friend Service Committee for 2 years. So the 2 years was up. They had a business meeting, and they were starting a new project out in Kunming in western China, a little place called Shiping, which is 30 miles up the road from Kunming. Kunming is the big city in western China. And so this is the group that went to a malaria control project. There's myself, there's Wang Shaoxin, Jean Liu, and Woodall's here are from England. He's a doctor and his wife. So this group, during the summer of 1948, we treated 4,000 patients in adamant pills to help control the malaria. At the end of 1948, each summer, we went back to Kunming, and I flew from Kunming to Hong Kong, got on a ship, and sailed south, went to the American soldiers had a war over there in Vietnam, and I was in Vietnam before the American soldiers were there. Went on down to Singapore, and then headed west to India, across the Indian Ocean. And we landed in Djibouti in Africa, then up the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal, across the Mediterranean to southern France, Marseille, France, and up to the railroad, on to England and on home. And that's my story.
are we doing away out in the boonies in China? And what is the FSU? Well, Roger has already told you that the FSU was the Friends Service Unit. And it's an offshoot, in a way, of the American Friends Service Committee, and also connected with Friends in England. So it was the Friends Ambulance Unit, the FAU, was organized by Quakers in England to provide an opportunity for British pacifists to do meaningful work outside the army. And the FAU got its start in England with the help of the chocolate company, the Cadbury Chocolate Company, which happens to be a Quaker firm. And at one time, 90% to 100% of the medicines that got to West China for civilian use were driven over the Himalayas by the Friends ambulance drivers. But after the war, they were looking for more opportunities for service, and the American Friends Service Committee and the Friends Ambulance Unit agreed that China's need for medical services was the place they wanted to begin, because up-to-date hospitals and trained health workers were almost non-existent in China. The American Friends Service Committee often does its work by setting up volunteer groups to bring needed medical or other services into places all over the world. And these people sign up for 2 years stints and receive food and lodging, but no salary while they're serving. And Mark Shaw and Roger Way were service committee recruits in 1946, and Mark and I got engaged to be married just before he left for China in 1946, and I was to wait and finish college, and we would be married when he got home. Well, Mark soon became very involved in the unit's work and felt it was a very good thing, and he was helping needy people. And by the end of the 2 years, he decided he'd rather stay for another 2 years and help build a hospital in Jungmu, the only one for 20 miles in any direction. So he wrote to me and asking if I'd come out and marry him there. Well, I was thrilled. I thought going to China with the American Friends Service Committee would be great. By this time I'd finished college, and I managed, with difficulty, to persuade the AFSC people that I was not too young, and I arrived in China, in Shanghai, in June '48. In August, we swept the sawdust out of the women's award of the new hospital and were married there by a Quaker ceremony. Now, I brought the Quaker
certificate.
This is a Quaker wedding certificate. My father was an artist, and so he contrived to make a border like this, which he said would have George Fox, the beginner of Quakerism, rolling in his grave. But he's put all kinds of Chinese fertility symbols in it. And it must have worked because we reared 5 children. And everybody who goes to the wedding signs up here on the bottom. So you're going to have a look at it afterwards. So later, at the annual team meeting in Shanghai in November, it was quite plain to the assembled service committee people that the nationalist government was not going to last. And this meant we would have to arrange to transfer money from the US to finish the hospital and do our other work. Mark and I were sent to Hong Kong to arrange through some bank contacts to get money up from the US to Hong Kong and from Hong Kong back into central China. We had an interesting time finding the bank, which was down at the end of a long dark hall, and a knock at the door, but the money arrangements were easily taken care of. And then we had a trip home to Jungmu, which was now in the hands of the new government, of communists. So we had to cross the lines. We flew to Hong Kong, which was still a nationalist territory, and then took a first-class train to upholstered seats and a tea table between, and fresh new tea every hour, until the end of the good tracks. And then we spent the night on the station platform in our double-down sleeping bag. We woke up in the morning to look into the faces of a ring of people who were all looking down at these foreigners sleeping on the platform. And that day, we rode in an empty coal car to Jumadien, which is another town south of Jungmu. And there we found a truck to cross no man's land. And the truck had an open bed, and I was lucky enough, as the only woman passenger, to ride in the cab, while Mark rode in the open back with about 30 other men. The truck went fine for a while, but suddenly stopped. A look in the engine showed a broken fan belt. No stores in any direction. A passenger said he could splice a rope. Mark wondered about this, a spliced rope for the fan belt, but the passenger worked on it and fitted it into the pulley, and the truck started up and chugged on to the end of its route. However, we still had some miles to go to get to Jungmu, and so we hired a wheelbarrow to carry our stuff. A Chinese wheelbarrow has the wheel in the center and two places on the side to pile stuff. So we trucked along with our wheelbarrow and walked on to Jungmu, where they were very glad to see us, since they had no word of us for a month and no money. And we brought the first mail from the US for ages. And we were then able to arrange a bank account in Kaifeng, which is 20 miles east of Jungmu, and our money was safely transferred with no more problems. Well, the unit had been concerned that there was no school in Jungmu, and we had started one with a Chinese teacher. We tried to get the nationalist government to take it over, and they said, oh yes, after the Moon Festival, after the rainy season, and so when the new communist government came in, and they said, what? The American imperialists are running the school? We can't have that. And they immediately wanted to take it over, and we said, oh good, we've been wanting to give it away. So they ran the school from then on. Okay, now let's see, where am I on this? By this time, actually, I've gone backwards here. I left out the Quaker wedding part. A Quaker wedding doesn't need a minister, but to make it legal, it must have the proper license. When I approached my Quaker meeting house here in the States about being married in China, they assured me that, oh yes, it could be done. But my mother later told me that it had come up at every business meeting for 6 months while they tried to get all the arrangements legally done. However, it was arranged. My father did the certificate, which I did show you just momentarily. This has all the necessary language about these are to certify to whom it may concern and all kinds of stuff. But the border was my father's contribution, and it has, as I said before, all the fertility symbols, and he had a great time doing it. And so our certificate is rather different from most of the other ones that you'll see. But it does have room for all the people's names who were at the wedding, and if you look carefully, you'll see Robert T. Crowder as the very first name. Let's see. There was something more that I haven't said, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, later we were sent to Hong Kong to forward mail from the States and England because there was still no direct mail from into the communist region. And so we stayed there in Hong Kong for 6 months, receiving mail from the States and England, readdressing it and sending it on to China so that the work could continue there. Any questions?
What year? Somebody asked what year.
What year? I went out in 1947 and, no, 46 and stayed till 48. We came home. We were married in 8th month, 8th. We came out in 40s. I don't know. Now, we have some pictures that Harry very kindly put into the proper order to show you. And this one is, this one shows how after the Yellow River was, banks were breached, and so the river flowed out all over the country. It raised the level so that to get into the house, you had to go down 3 feet, and then on the inside, back up 3 feet because of the flooded silt. Okay. And this is a donkey pulling water up out of the well, and they blindfolded him because otherwise he wouldn't walk around in a circle. Okay. And this is a man dumping out the new bricks that have just been put into the frame there, and you can see the other bricks that have just been dumped out, and they were going to dry there and be sun-baked bricks. And they only used the kiln bricks for the part up to the windows, where it might get damp. But above the windows, they used the sun-dried bricks. This is how you square a tree into a beam using an adze. That was for the new hospital. Okay. And here's the beginning of the new hospital. That's a nurse setting a couple of the stones down in the dugout part just to be fancy. And the rest of it was done by masons. Okay, go ahead. And there's the part of the new hospital getting bigger, and with all the bricks waiting to be put in place. Go ahead. Oh, and out beyond it is the flooded area. And this is the little boy with Kala Azar, the same kind of picture that Roger showed you, sort of picture that he showed you. And we had a team that went out to all the outlying areas, and with a course of intravenous needles into your neck. It was, I think, 3 weeks long, one shot every day. The Kala Azar could be licked. Otherwise, it was 100% fatal.
What caused the
Sandfly.
Some kind of something that bit you, wasn't it?
Sandfly.
Sandfly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Go ahead. Oh, and this is an ancient tomb entrance. All these statues are hundreds of years old, and you come across them in rural China, among the fields and in between places and so on. You can see the town away off in the left behind there. And they're not as careful about don't touch the ancient things. You can see people sitting on them all the time. Here's another one similar. There are these kind of things all over the place. And they're growing cotton in between. Okay, go ahead. And this is a walled city. Great many of the cities in China were walled. Jungmu was at one time a walled city, but it didn't get fixed up after the war. But this one has the ancient wall. And there's looking down through a high building at one of the entrances to the town around the wall. You have to go into that thing, that building walls, in order to get into the city, so that if you're an enemy coming in, you can be recognized pretty easily inside that gate. Stop that. This is the Iron Pagoda in Kaifeng, and it's not iron at all. It's made of bricks with a glaze on them that looks like iron, but it's always known as the Iron Pagoda, and there are the bricks glazed to look like quite a lot of iron. Okay. And this is an old gateway to a city, a village, which is obviously a very old village. And the gateway somehow got kept over the centuries. And I think lots of towns had gateways at one time, but not very many now. This is a child all dressed up for New Year's. Please note the shoes. All children often had shoes like this made for special occasions. And they're made out of cloth, like the ones up here on the table, and all decorated with eyes. And this is a ferry. The people are getting on the ferry, and there aren't anywhere near enough to go yet. All these people are coming and going. And this is to cross the Yellow River, which that was. Oh, and this is a bus. Half the passengers have gotten off the bus, and to have lunch, and those are the rest of them still waiting to get off. And this is one of the wheelbarrows. And this shows a place to cross the Yellow River, and these funny bumpy things are because in order to keep the dikes, each person in the village has to have a special place to dig up his amount, the proper amount, and they leave walls in the middle to show that they've dug their place. And that's a ferry that's getting ready to go across. And here's one of our trucks broken down along the road. That's the road. And the railroad was unfortunately turned over by the Japanese when they wanted to do things in China, railroad behind. But somebody's going to fix our truck and we'll get it going again. Okay? And this is where a road, a very, very old road, has worn down over the centuries so that it once was up high and has worn down into that gully. Go ahead. And here is a restaurant where people have stopped for lunch. And many restaurants, I don't know what they did in the winter, but in the summer it was fine. And here's a bunch of us, our workers, stopped for the night, and because there was no inn in this particular place. Okay, and here's bath time. If you're on a trip, this is better than nothing. And here's the school, and at one time, at several times we ran a school, and the nationalist government was delighted to have us run the school, but when the communist government came in, they said, "What? The American imperialists are running a school?" And they immediately took it over with our thanks. We really did not want to run a school, but there wasn't any other one. And there's another picture. Oh, and this is the building for our headquarters in Zhongmu. We hired one of the Chinese houses with courtyards that all of you have read about in books about China. And this is one of the courtyards, and the building behind is one of the big buildings, and it had two big rooms, which were our dining rooms. The one on the right was the foreign food dining room, and the one on the left was the Chinese food dining room. Okay. And that's C.T. Liu, and he was one of the students, university students, who joined our group. And like most of the other Chinese students that we had anything to do with, he was sure that the new government, which was a communist government, was going to do a better job than the nationalist government had done. And unfortunately, an awful lot of the nationalist government had gotten a little too handy with grabbing the money, and there were a lot of problems. Anyway, C.T. was a great guy. Okay, and here are some
Camels.
Oh yeah, I could. Maybe I should try and see the camels. Can you see the camels? Yeah. Okay. Right over here. From here, they didn't look very obvious.
The wheelbarrow.
Real camels. We had camels used for transporting goods. They came into our courtyard at Zhongmu at one time. And you'd see them out on the roads. Okay.
Wheelbarrow.
Wheelbarrow. Oh, see where?
On the left,
To the left.
on the left corner.
Oh, yeah, well, is that a wheelbarrow? Could be. It's pretty full. Okay, this is the very last picture, and guess what? This is Jumu, taken by our son when he was there just a couple of years ago.
Is the hospital still there?
Is
Is
Excuse
that,
me?
Hospital?
The hospital is still there, and they have built a 3-story enormous hospital, and our little hospital looks like a baby and is out in a different part of town. But they were very happy to have it at the time. Any other questions? Okay.
Did anyone have questions for the other speakers, CK or Roger?
We have to stop up there.
Oh, and we have an exhibit up here of items that Roger and the Shaws brought back from China, so please come and look at them.
Some of them are very everyday things, and some of them are not.
Yes, okay. Well, thank you very much, and thank you, CK and Roger and the Shaws. It was a wonderful program.